Thank God it's Friday. Good morning. Welcome to the Friday edition of Business Morning right here on Channels Television. It's 55 minutes of current and relevant business conversation. That's what we do here. I'm Ini John Mekwa, and we get right into it. We can tell you that Chicago wheat prices rose on Friday as hot and dry weather in the United States and other key exporting countries raised the prospect of lower yields. Soybeans gained around and were poised for a second straight weekly rise as adverse weather is likely to trim U.S. output. For the week, soybeans are up almost 2%, while corn and wheat are down. The U.S. spring wheat crop is suffering, with dry weather in the northern plains likely to reduce yields. Argentina's current wheat crop needs precipitation in the coming days across key farmland in order to stave off a hit to yields, according to a weekly report from the exchange. Prolonged heat across many Ukrainian regions has dried the upper soil level, creating unfavorable conditions for the forthcoming winter grain sowing. The European Commission further reduced its outlook for European Union production of major cereal and oilseed crops this season, with maize seeing the sharpest reduction. Malaysian palm oil futures were set on Friday for their first weekly gain in 4 as prices rose further on the back of a weaker ringgit and stronger rival edible oils. The benchmark palm oil contract for November delivery on the Bursa Malaysia Derivatives Exchange rose 9 ringgit to 3,932 ringgit per metric ton in early trade, extending gains for a 4th session. For the week, the contract has been 5.4% so far. And looking at the fundamentals now, the European Union has said that it had launched an investigation into whether biodiesel from Indonesia was circumventing EU duties by going through China and Britain. And the ringgit, palm oil's currency of trade, has declined 1.2% against the dollar so far this week, making the edible oil cheaper for buyers holding foreign currency. Dalian's most active soy oil contracts rose 1.1%, and its palm oil contract gained 1.1%. Soy oil prices on the Chicago Board of Trade were up 0.6%, rising for a 5th session as hot and dry weather conditions in the U.S. Midwest could reduce production. And of course, palm oil is affected by price movements in related oils as they compete for a share in the markets. And talking about oil now, oil prices, that's crude oil now, looked set to snap a 7-week winning streak on Friday as concerns about China's slowing economic growth and the possibility of more U.S. interest rate hikes outweighed signs of tightening supply. Major benchmarks were slightly high on Friday, with U.S. West Intermediate crude futures rising 22 cents to $80.61 a barrel, while Brent was up 8 cents to $84.12 a barrel. The 7-week winning streak was the longest for both benchmarks this year. Brent futures rose about 18% and WTI by 20% in the 7 weeks ended August the 11th to the highest levels in months before pairing some gains this week when both fell by more than 3%. The United States Federal Reserve's focus on containing inflation amid stronger than expected economic data was keeping a lid on prices, which have risen sharply in the recent weeks due to concerns over supply. The U.S. Labor Department on Thursday reported the number of Americans filing new claims for jobless benefit fell in the last week, suggesting that the still tight employment market could prolong the Fed's tightening campaign to cool the economy. And that report followed similarly upbeat economic data earlier in the week, including U.S. retail sales, which suggests that the Fed may have to stick with higher rates for longer. Investors fret that higher borrowing costs could impede economic growth and in turn reduce overall oil demand and other commodities. All right, now, yesterday we did tell you about the Standards Organization of Nigeria and their efforts to spread the e-payment platform that they have introduced, which allows for both electronic payments and electronic receipts in transacting with the Standards Organization of Nigeria. This move has been taken to Enugu State in southeast Nigeria, and the director there tells us about it. And then also yesterday was that employment data. Normally we would have unemployment data released in Nigeria. However, yesterday the NBS started with a new method that they have adopted and gave us some numbers representing, or supposed to represent, the employment data in Nigeria.
Staff of the National Bureau of Statistics have gathered here to launch the report for the Nigeria Labour Force Survey in the fourth quarter of 2022 and the first quarter of 2023. The Chief Executive Officer of the National Bureau of Statistics, Mr. Adeyemi Adeniran, explains the redefined parameters for one to be considered unemployed.
Working age population, as seen in the presentation and the documentary itself. This was defined previously as people aged 15 to 64. But with this new concept and definition that we are using, which is what is applicable all over other countries, we are changing into 15 years and above. The new standard defines unemployment as persons with the labor force, within the labor force, who within the 7 days reference period did not work for pay or profit for a minimum of 1 hour.
Mr. Adeniran goes on to explain that the unemployment rate in Nigeria is now at 4.1% in the first quarter of 2023.
Using the new ILO definition, the survey showed that unemployment rate for the fourth quarter of 2022 stood at 5.3%. And for the first quarter of 2023, it was 4.1%. Based on the new methodology.
The Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Abubakar Bagudu, cuts the ribbon to unveil the Nigeria Labour Force report. Senator Abubakar Bagudu and a World Bank representative stressed the importance of data.
It is imperative that a lot needs to be done to address the high rate of youth unemployment in the country. This report will no doubt provide evidence-based indicators for tackling youth unemployment and address its attendant social implications.
Data periodically helps government, helps all of us figure out what's going well, what's working well, where the problems are, what kind of interventions are needed, what kinds of policies and programs are needed, and in general, just to take the pulse of how are Nigerians doing.
Overall, the National Bureau of Statistics says it is constantly seeking to enhance their data collection process to align with international best practices.
You are also welcome.
That's right. That was a big story for Nigeria yesterday, the employment data released by the NBS. That's why we have the Statistician General of the Federation. He's also the Chief Executive Officer of the National Bureau of Statistics, Mr. Adeyemi Adeniran, joining us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Adeniran. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
So ever since you released this new method of your survey, there's been a lot of conversations. Some economists are not comfortable with it. The definition of employment, of underemployment, they believe that it will not allow the true picture of employment in the country to be captured. Could you give us some of the highlights of it and, why you decided to go this route?
Right. Thank you once again. The newly redesigned and expanded Nigerian Labour Force Survey is the best that we can have for the country as at now. Before,
the working age population, where the issue of labor market statistics start, is pegged at 15 to 64 years, or is defined as 15 to 64 years. With this new methodology, we have revised it in line with the ILO standard that other countries of West Africa, Africa as a whole, and indeed the whole world are using. It is 15 years and above. After that, in line with the standard, again, the number of hours that a person needs to work before he or she is determined or is classified as being in employment or not, has been also benchmarked at 1 hour a week. When we say 1 hour a week, it does not mean that we have pegged the number of hours that a person must work in 1 week to 1 hour. What it means is that those people that have been working before, that we have been taking out of the people that are producing goods and services that we capture in our national account, are left out. But now, with this new methodology, we have been able to bring them into the basket. For instance, before, if you work between 1 hour to 19 hours in a week, you are regarded as unemployed. With the structure of our economy as at present, in Nigeria, is it okay for us to say that somebody that work between 1 to 19 hours in 1 week, don't look at the 1 hour because it's just a benchmark. We are not saying you must only work for 1 hour. After 1 hour, you go back to your house and sleep. Even if you have opportunity to work for more hours, that is not what we are saying. So if you work 1 hour to 19 hours before, we are saying that you are unemployed. Is that the correct situation on ground? There are a lot of people that work 5 hours, 6 hours in a week, and they are satisfied with that number of hours maybe because of earning and other factors that surround the kind of work that they do. And they are not asking for more hours of work except that one that they are putting.
All right, Mr. Adeniran, I
think... Now going to force them that no, you must work more hours.
I think
that's... If you are getting enough money from that.
I think that's where the question actually starts from. For instance, you say now from, you classify working age to be about 14, 15 years. And then someone will ask you, when we look at the Nigerian environment in reality, should we say that children of 14, 15 years are workers and earning, and we can now classify them as being employed? And then you also talked about between 1 hour to 4 hours, and you said there are people who work like 5 hours and are satisfied with it. I mean, it raises a lot of questions. I mean, when you look at the reality of our economy, people who do such works, for instance, you employ a gardener, he comes to your house and works for just a couple of hours, and we count that as employment. We all know that that man cannot take care of his family comfortably. That's the fact. So, you know, when you now calculate this as employment, a lot of people have a problem with it, and we've had many conversations with economists right here saying that it is questionable and it does not capture the real state of our employment or unemployment in Nigeria.
All right. I think when we talk about employment, people tend to look at employment in formal sector, or employment in wage or salary office. employment is when you are engaged in an activity that fetch you wages or salary, or that fetches you profit. So employment is not only when you work in an office or in a company. And in the structure of our economy is highly informal economy. And that is why we see that 95%, about 95% of people that are working in Nigeria are working in informal sector. So if you concentrate only on those that are working 40 hours that are maybe government workers or a standard company worker, and they are just about 13% of the total workforce, total working age population in the country. So if you want to concentrate on that, and you have self-employed people that work in the informal sector that are like 90%, you want to leave those ones outside and concentrate and say that because what they are earning cannot take them home. This is exactly what the data is talking about, that we need to provide information to the government that, look, majority of the people that are working, the large proportion are informal sector. Majority of people that are working, a large number of them are not working up to the potential that they want in terms of number of hours. Majority of people that are working, the take home that they are getting is not what can survive them. These are the information that are contained in that report, which is what government need to plan to ensure that this huge informal sector that we have, how do we transform them to a formal economy? How do we bring them on board, enroll them, support them, and let them transform into a formal economy where everybody, all of us are aspiring, that so that if you have a lot of them now, they can absorb more people, and people can work more hours, and then they can earn a good living. The labor force survey is not about welfare survey. It's not a welfare survey. What it captures is your engagement in an activity that gives you income, wages, or salary or profit if you are into services or trade. So don't bring in the issue of it doesn't, I work for 8 hours in a week. It doesn't give me enough amount of money that I want. There are other surveys that look at the welfare of workers or citizens as a whole. The Nigerian Living Standard Survey look at the welfare of the people. The Food Security Survey look at whether people have food or not to eat in an affordable manner. There are other surveys that deal with issue of health. So we cannot bring in the objective of other surveys into the labor force survey.
All right.
The labor force survey is just looking at engagement of people, the number of hours they put in, what type of work are they doing, and what are the conditions of that work.
All right.
So these are the information that government can use to plan and address what is happening in the labor market in Nigeria.
All right, thank you for that explanation, Mr. Adeniro. So we see that 3/4 from the report that you released yesterday, 3/4 of working age Nigerians were employed. That's 73.6% in the fourth quarter of last year, and 76.7% in the first quarter of this year. By implication, by the fourth quarter of last year, 2022, only 26% of Nigerians were unemployed, and then 23% unemployed in the first quarter of this year. But does that capture, you know, we've had a lot of things happen in the economy between late last year, before the election, first quarter of this year, and all of that. Does it really capture it? And as you have said, of course, we agree with you that the MBS is there to give the data, but we have always been questioning if the data actually captures the reality. For instance, the inflation data. Some economists believe that real inflation is about 50%, if not more. You know, so this again, when you say only 26% of Nigerians were unemployed by late last year and less than that at the first quarter of this year, it just raises a lot of questions.
So, thank you. I think this is why I'm happy that we are invited to come and make some clarification. For instance, when you are quoting 20-something% unemployed, that's not the figure. 23%, 25% are people that are supposed to be working in working age. You know, I started by defining the working age population. And I said that's where all other labor market statistics we derive from. Among the people that are 15 and above in the country, that's the working age, 73 or 76% of them are working, are engaged in one activity or the other within the reference period. The remaining 20-something% that are not working, they are not unemployed. We are saying that the housewife, the student, they are part of the working age population, but they are not working. And we cannot say they are not employed because they are in school. They are not part of the calculation of unemployment. When we want to talk about unemployment, is those that are within that working age population that are looking for work to do, available to do the work, ready to do the work, and they are searching for it, but they cannot get. That is when we say this person is unemployed. But for housewives, for elderly people, for students, they are classified as out of labor force. And because they are not engaged, that is why we say they are not working. We didn't say they are unemployed because they are not part of the calculation for unemployment. So these are some of the things. Unemployment rate for the Q4 of 2022 is 5.3. The unemployment rate for the Q1 of 2023 is 4.1. That is the unemployment rate. The other figure you are quoting is people that are not working, that are within the working age group. So we need to really understand this concept, and that's why we are here to make this clarification. And then when you say that people are expecting that if somebody is 14 years or less, are we expecting them to work? That is, they are already out of labor force. They are not part of what we are considering, because we said for you to be considered to be in labor force, first you must be among the working age population of 15 years and above. Before, what we have is to peg the age at 15 to 64 years. But just to show you that this data now reflect exactly what is happening in the economy as a whole. You have people that are in the university, professors that are 70 years of age. In the whole methodology, it means that those people are not going to be considered at all when we are estimating people that are employed in the country. And they are contributing a lot to our economy. The judges, they retire at the age of 70, but we have pegged the age for consideration of employed people at 15 to 64, which means those judges that are outside the age of 64 that are still working, we are not capturing them. We have expanded this to ensure that all the people that are contributing to the economy, all the people that are engaged in one activity or the other are captured. That is what this has done for us. We have also seen from the data that the informal sector those that work not in formal sector like 8 hours salary at the end of the month, but they only get profit and they only work on daily basis, maybe for some few hours. The woman that is frying akara outside there, that is what that woman is using to train his children in school. But because he's not working in a setting, on an environment of giving a number of hours for her to work, we want us to be saying, why are you capturing them? Because if you just go out, she will go out in the morning, fry akara for 2 hours or 3 hours, and done for the day.
All right, sir.
Because it's not up to 8 hours, we should not
all right, Mr.
That is what we have done.
Thank you so much for your explanation. Statistician General of the Federation and the Chief Executive of National Bureau of Statistics. We hope to get more data from you, and I hope one of these days you will come for us to talk about our inflation data. That's also another, we have a lot of questions around that, but we're out of time, totally out of time now. That's why we cannot take that. But thank you for sparing some time for us this morning.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to explain some of these things to Nigerians, and thank all the Nigerians for having interest in our data. It's the engagement of our data that make us to improve from day to day and to ensure that we are providing accurate and high-level quality data for government, for all other users of our data.
All right, sir.
Thank you so much.
It's our data too. It's Nigeria's data, so we have to be interested in it. Well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes. Yes.
All right, we have more conversations on this data, obviously, but let's see what LaFarge is doing, giving its customers, and then we'll be back to continue.
From all parts of the country, trade partners of LaFarge Africa converge on Lagos Continental Hotel as the 2023 edition of its annual awards comes alive. Music and stage performances make it an evening of entertainment and celebration for those who added value to the LaFarge brand in 2022. Appreciating its partners, the Chief Executive Officer of LaFarge Africa reaffirms the company's commitment to continue to accelerate its customers for growth.
You have all been invaluable partners to us, and thank you for the level of your commitment and your dedication. In alignment with our corporate vision of accelerating green growth, we are committed to reducing our carbon footprint at scale, taking actions across the building life cycle through investment and innovation in more sustainable solutions within our manufacturing process.
And so the awards rolling. Distributors across 4 regions, the North, Lagos, West and the East, are recognized and awarded in various categories covering volume of sales of the company's products, distribution network, consistency and innovation, among others. Global Cinco West Africa Limited gets the award for the national highest volume contributor.
It takes hard work to be here, and LaFarge has been a wonderful company to us. And all we need to do is to support LaFarge and make sure we do the best to make them #1 cement company in Nigeria.
LaFarge Africa Commercial Director speaks more about the company's sustainability plan.
We launched UNICEF eco-label product from the Calabar plant, and we're going to be doing more of this across all of our plants and across all of our products to make sure our products are more eco-friendly and continue to support our sustainability agenda.
LaFarge, a leading building materials company, has over 700 distributors nationwide, ensuring that end users find its products available at all times.
Welcome back. Still watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. And we still have our eyes on those employment data released by the NBS yesterday. Just finished a conversation with the Chief Executive Officer of the NBS. Now let's get the perspective of an analyst. Joining us from Abuja also is Mr. Arome Salifu, the Executive Director of Africa Youth Growth Foundation. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Salifu. I believe you heard a bit of what the statistics in general talks about, especially the definition of the working age and employed and unemployed, and all of that. Could you share your thoughts or your reaction with us on what you think about the new method which the NBS is using, and of course the numbers that have come up, because the method obviously has affected the numbers that we saw released yesterday?
Yeah. Thank you so much. First is to acknowledge the fact that for every data you see out there, the underlying determinant is the methodology. And with the changes in the methodology, looking at the labor, survey, you realize that there have been a lot of dramatic changes, in the figures. Looking at the fact that the new method captures changes in even definition, scope, concept, and even principles, to a large extent, that informed, the new, changes in the data. But having said that, you also realize the fact that the changes that we have in the data does not necessarily, translate to changing the realities, on the ground. What has happened is simply to speak to the fact that they have expanded the scope, of the coverage as against what used to be, before. For example, there is now inclusion of more informal actors or players, in the calculation, where you now have, persons that were excluded before, now included in the new methodology. And that naturally, for instance, you have a situation where the persons of age, 15 and above now captured, as against, 15 to 64 or 5, before. So it expanded the coverage and the scope, and including more people in the definition of those who are employed, those who are underemployed, and even that reflect in the statistics. For example, as against what we have before, in the first quarter of 2023, report as just released, you now have 4.1, as the current level of, unemployment in the country. And you now have 12.2 as the current level of underemployment. And now youth unemployment now stands at 18.1%. That is a huge, departure from what we used to have, before. But again, for me, the optics is the fact that we now have a new government, new ministers. The essence of all of this data is to, advise, inform, and indeed guide policymakers to also ensure that, whatever they come up with is consistent with, the realities. So data is meant to guide, the decision makers and the policy makers to ensure that they get their decisions on the basis of, information and accurate, data. So for me, the optics would be that the new government, particularly the new ministers, should apply, this data to whatever, policy formulation, project design, and of course, how they prioritize, certain population, in the way and manner they come up with project design. You also look at the fact that, the youth unemployment, of course, remain very high, regardless of the methodology.
But at 18%,
data that we have.
Sorry, at 18%, can we say it's high? Because that's what the NBS is telling us. If we have 18% of Nigeria's youth unemployed, and we have general unemployment at just about 4%, I mean, it doesn't sound like we have a dire situation in our hands.
Yes, to be honest with you, the new methodology captures quite a lot, in a way that you can actually, perhaps feel the need to neutralize or even debate some of, their positions. How could you, for example, agree that if you have worked for just 1 hour in a week, you are considered to be employed? Look at that argument. Some other persons will tell you that no, if you are able to work for just 1 hour, in a week, I mean, it's as good as you are not employed. So that is relative for me, and that is also debatable. The reality is not exactly what the data, is saying. If I'm in a position to debate, argue, and indeed counter the position of NBS, particularly the methodology, to interrogate the methodology, I would want to say that perhaps this, current methodology could be very misleading, because we still have contradictory reality, from, the current, data. But of course, we have conventional and global practices on some of this methodology. And what Nigeria has simply done is to incorporate, adopt that global, methodology in terms of labor force, survey.
Yeah, but Mr. Salifu, sorry. Some people will ask, should we just adopt because it's a global practice, or should we customize to capture our own reality? Isn't that the way we can move forward?
Yes, I agree with you, but, there is a place of principle and there's a place, of practice and then reality. In the context of this conversation, for me, I would, of course, want to align myself with the reality, because regardless of what the data says, you also have the reality that says quite, a number of young people wake up without idea of where they are going to work, and that is a challenge that, those in government, the policymakers and the, implementers should now, get cracking, in the context of their responsibilities and mandate, at the level of the federal, of course, looking at the executive, the National Assembly, and then the states, the governors, and the state assemblies, down to the local government. There's now the need to prioritize, youth, empowerment, employment, and indeed to see that they reduce the current, level of youth unemployment in particular, youth poverty, by implication. Now, if you look critically, there is what we call, employment ecosystem. If you have a system where one is working and the other is not working, certainly you still have quite a lot of challenges in your hands. I'll give you an example. In this country, you have a lot of people who simply come out of the university, about 5-point-something million every year come out of the university, and they're all with certificates, but with little or no skills, to be able to back up the certificate. And yet, we have not realized the fact that, the kind of employment that we have been used to over the years is not going to be sustainable, and it's not going to actually be available, over time.
All right.
You look,
yeah.
We have limited chances for people to be employed in government, ministries and agencies. But again, the other alternative is the private sector.
Yeah,
now, the private sector, to get you employed,
all right,
you've got to come...
Mr. Arome, we have to stop there because we do have another guest here in the studio we have to accommodate. But I promise we'll get back to you to talk about this. Obviously, even the Statistician General talked about the informal sector, you know, and creation of jobs. But thank you so much, Mr. Arome Salifu, the Executive Director of Africa Youth Growth Foundation, for your thoughts and perspective this morning.
Thank you.
Well, we're still staying on the issue, and joining me here in the studio in Lagos to share the NECA perspective, I would say, is the Director General of Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, Mr. Adewale Smatoyerinde. Thank you so much. I know you've heard from the CEO of NBS to Mr. Salifu there. Absolutely. The issue of methodology. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to understand and grasp in my mind when we say unemployment in Nigeria this time is about 4%, you know, and youth unemployment is about 18%. You guys are the employers. Do you have this much Nigerians? You have about how many percent of Nigerians? About 76% of Nigerians employed, not just, of course, in the brick and mortar, but also in the informal sector.
Well, I think the first thing we have to look at is the context. You know, it's all contextual issues now. And if you don't have a grasp of the context, then you will contend with the outcome, you know. The new methodology has expanded the scope of what work is, and for most of us, we're still stuck a bit with the traditional perspective of work. So if you don't divorce your mind from that perspective of work, what work is, and you are confronted with the reality of this new methodology, then you have problems understanding the NBS position. Now, does the data, does it explain the reality? Probably not. But the data basically gives us something to work with. You know, it gives us an avenue, it gives us a platform for advocacy, it gives us a platform to review, it gives us a platform to understand the risk that we face and probably the opportunities inherent in our system. But fundamentally, as one of your guests have said also, best practice, best benchmarks, global benchmarks, they are beautiful, they create opportunities for comparison. But we have also advocated that, look, beyond best practice, we should also progressively start looking at the issue of best fit. You know, yes, we have the global data, then how exactly can we interpret this data within the context of our reality? Our major worry is this, and we hope government will play its role, and the new ministers will play their role in making the best use of this data. It's weaponizing those data. It depends on where you are looking at it from. Data is just like law. They say law is an has. You know, if somebody should murder somebody, if you have a good lawyer, you can go away with manslaughter. So you can take a data and, depending on your perspective, weaponize the data and start creating confusion with it. But for us, it's going back to the data released, doing a thorough analysis of those parameters again, and communicating the realities to government. And look, yes, this is the new data, but does it mean that the economy has come out of the doldrums? We don't think so. Does it mean organized businesses are now doing well and we're employing, as it were? Absolutely not.
So at least the minister has something to start with.
They have something to start with, basically.
Yeah, where would you think, or where would you suggest the Minister of Employment at this time, and of course other ministers, but let's start from, this is the matter at hand now. Where should he start from? Well,
for the Minister of Employment, first we congratulate His Excellency for the appointment. We believe he must have hit the ground running with briefings and reading handover notes. But for us, 3 or 4 things are quite germane that he has to address, and we have to address quickly. We have the reviewed labor law that was approved by FEC, the last FEC. It's still probably with the Ministry of Justice. And then we have to expedite action on the labor law, because it's basically the foundation for relationship in the context of those of us in the employment space. Also, we have to look at the issue of strengthening labor administration institutions, because I think that there is a major challenge in those institutions, and the need for stakeholders, social partners, to also give due respect to those institutions. And I mean the National Industrial Court, the Industrial Arbitration Panel, and all institutions that are created to guide labor administration. Also for us is the reform of the industrial relations system. You know, I think conflicts are inherent in the system itself, but conflicts are basically meant to promote or stir up growth on the long run. But when conflict becomes destructive, then it creates a change in dynamics for you, not only for the economy, it changes dynamics even for the workplace. And we feel there is need for us to take a thorough look at the context and the content of our industrial relations system. We know the industrial relations policy for Nigeria is under review, and we will also urge an expedited action so that we review, we validate, and then we adopt. Not leaving out the critical issue of social dialogue. We have to strengthen social dialogue amongst the social partners and also take a critical look at the data that we have now from the LBS concerning employment generation and job security.
And of course, the sensitive issue of minimum wage, did you mention that?
Yeah, for minimum wage, we believe the best the minister can do is constitute the committee, start the process of constituting the committee, following the ILO convention at the 130 on fixing of minimum wage. Once that is done, we've done it twice. Minimum wage committee that came up with the 18,000, then a minimum wage committee that came up with the 30,000. So there's a framework. And it's just for the minister to initiate that process, get the committee to be set up, and then we start working towards a new minimum wage in 2024.
A lot of work for the Minister of Employment, and we do wish him the very best. And of course, working in consonance with related industry, NECA, and all of that. Thank you for your time this morning.
Anytime.
All right, so it is time to go into the market in just a couple of minutes. And what that means is we'll give you numbers from the NGX yesterday during Business Incorporated. I was rather excited, you know, to see that the NGX surpassed 66,000 at the intraday, but by the close of trade, it was something else that we saw. I was shocked. I wasn't expecting that much. So if we look at the numbers for the markets for yesterday, we would see that it closed in the negative 0.14% and is down to 65,401. All share index 51,595 year to date, added 27.65%. Equity at 35 trillion naira. Year to date is in the red. 50 billion, lost 50 billion. That's the total market value. If we look at the other part there, we'll see the activity chart in the green. And I think for year to date, still looking really good. For instance, value has gone more than 200% from January till this day. And then let's see some of the stocks. Okay, the sectors there very full of red. Only consumer goods was up yesterday, 0.96%. I guess it was late hour trading because even insurance that has been doing good also dropped yesterday, 0.24%, as well as oil and gas. Banking, the most liquid, as you know, always gets the biggest blow and was down there. Now looking at the fixed income market, 12 deals for the federal government bonds worth 9.66 billion naira. We just have to run through. We still have our crypto, so let's go. CBN bills had 9 deals yesterday worth 30 billion naira. And then let's see the next one, the Treasury. Okay, you have the open market. Open market, really quiet market. Unfortunately, we cannot have a conversation on this today. Do hope we can have that on Monday. Oh, okay, just a word. Okay, hi, good morning. So just a word there, being a quiet one. Do we expect any moves soon in the fixed income market?
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's not a very, very active market simply because of system illiquidity. Federal allocations have been declared and they are expected today. Going into next week, we expect a more active market as we end the month. But the story of this month has been more of illiquidity as the central bank resumed debiting CRR for LDR adjustments. So the plan is to manage excess liquidity from the system in order to ensure that inflation does not keep surging.
So next week, we expect it to be the same. Is there anything that can move the market? next week? Hello, Mr. Odusoya, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I was asking your expectation for next week, if there's a factor that you see moving the market next week.
Federal allocations coming in at the major stroke that we expect, because system had been illiquid. So basically when funds come in, we expect a more active market. Right now, most of the traders are on one side. Everybody wants to sell securities to raise some cash. But when federal allocations coming through the banks, we'll see some taper in yields and prices moving slightly up, and then increased activity next week.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Bankole Odusoya. Thank you for your time. Chief Dealer with Polaris Bank. All right, now let's move to the next market, which is the crypto market. We're back to a red, the color of this period, this season, and we see that Bitcoin has lost almost 1.5% in 24 hours, still on 26 there. If it moves a little bit more than this, it's going to get to 25,000, and it might be a good buy for you, but a risk for some investors. Ethereum is also down 1.32% at 1,651.73. Generally red. Let's look at the index there and see how that looks like. Yeah, 36 greed. Wow, doesn't look very good though at 36. Okay, now let's have Rume. Rume Ofi joins us now to tell us what he thinks of the market. This very red color. Hi, Rume, good morning. How have you been coping? You're an investor in this market.
Good morning. Good morning. It's been a very good opportunity to see the ups and downs, colds and hordes of the market. It's amazing. Some days ago, the market actually went up with some movement as a result of NVIDIA earnings that came up. We saw AI tokens moving really like crazy. NVIDIA has really done well, 13.5 billion, 101% year on year, and the stock has done very well this year, 250%. You know, so all of that affecting the AI tokens. But that is not to say that the crypto market and altcoin markets have not seen significant low in liquidity. The liquidity has been very, very high. Very, very high like never before, and it's a challenge in the market. Also, let's not forget that two events, even with the fact that liquidity is very, very low right now, like I said, is a very big challenge. Two events are also going to also play out, like the Mt. Gox, an exchange platform that was hacked some 11 years ago. Very soon, people are going to be collecting their funds back, their coins back, but they're going to be paid in coin, and that's also going to affect liquidity. Then also, the court has given FTX directive to pay their investors that they are holding for their bankruptcy, right? And they are partnering with Galaxy Digital to be able to pay all of that. And some of the highest tokens there that people need to be very careful of, one of them is Solana. Solana is they are holding about $685 million of Solana, Bitcoin about 529, I beg your pardon, of them, and a couple of other coins. So if these coins are sold to this company and for people to get cash, hopefully liquidity is going to go more. So people need to be very careful and play safe.
Yeah, but I know that eyes are for second half of next year, the halving of Bitcoin. I'm sure even heading towards that is going to bring some other movements and reactions in the market.
I have a contrary view to that because market cycles can be different sometimes. We know that after the halving, market can be very bullish, but we need to be careful because we have a credit issue in global markets. So it might not necessarily happen the way we expect. Wow. So people should have a plan B in case it doesn't work out.
Thank you for the warning, Rume. You're the first person who has brought another perspective. Everybody has been expecting positive, you know, coming with the halving. But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning, Rume.
Thank you, Ini.